Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
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 Good morning, children.
Good morning, ma'am.
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 Yeah,
Good
good
morning, ma'am.
morning, all of
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning,
you.
ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning,
So let's start revision of chapter 14. Okay. First of all, in this chapter, we are going to deal with the reproduction in animals. In class 7th, you all have studied about plants. Now here, first of all, Ananya, you tell me what is
Yes,
reproduction?
ma'am. Reproduction is the ability of living organisms to produce young ones similar to themselves.
Okay, very good. Navya, how many types of reproduction are there? And
There are two types of reproduction: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction.
Define asexual reproduction.
The type of reproduction in which does not involve any fusion of gametes is called asexual reproduction. On the other hand, the production of young ones by a formation and fusion of special cells called gametes, contributed generally by two parents, is termed as sexual reproduction.
Okay, correct. Next, how many types of asexual reproduction are there? Now, whose turn? Shubh Narayan.
Yes, ma'am.
How
There
many
are,
types of asexual
yes,
reproduction
ma'am.
you have seen?
Ma'am, binary fission, multiple fission, budding, and parthenogenesis.
Okay. So, although parthenogenesis don't include it in types of asexual reproduction, clear? That is a different process. Or it is a
Yes,
type
ma'am.
of asexual reproduction, but we are not going to include in types. Okay. Explain about binary fission. Sure.
Yes, ma'am. This is a method of asexual reproduction in which occurs in unicellular organisms. In this method, the nucleus divides into two daughter cells. Some of such organisms are amoeba and multiple fission. This is a method of asexual reproduction in
Wait. Multiple other will say Sarah.
Yes, ma'am. It is the repeated division of parent cell into number of small individual, for example, plasmodium.
Okay. Next, Ria Kumari,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
you tell about budding.
Budding, the formation of a new individual from a small protuberance called the bud arising on the parent body is called budding. For example, budding takes place in organisms like hydra and yeast. The offspring remains attached to the parent during its growth. It separates at an appropriate time to live as an independent organism.
Okay. Next, Vashvi.
Yes, ma'am.
Vashvi,
Yes, ma'am.
can you explain parthenogenesis?
Yes, ma'am. It is parthenogenesis is a form of asexual reproduction in which females produce eggs that develop without fertilization. Parthenogenesis occurs naturally in aphids, rotifers.
Okay. Next, Aditya Raj.
Yes, ma'am.
You tell me what is asexual reproduction?
Sexual reproduction is a production of young ones with the involvement of both the parents and the fusion of both the gametes of male as well as female.
Okay. Next is Anupriya. What
Yes,
is
ma'am.
the alternative name given to asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction?
Yes, ma'am. Asexual reproduction is also known as uniparental reproduction, and sexual reproduction is also known as biparental reproduction.
Okay, correct. Pragya.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
You tell me what is hermaphrodite?
Yes, in some cases, like that of the earthworm, the same individual produce both types of gametes, and the earthworm is known as a hermaphrodite animal.
Okay, next, Aditi Priya. What is fertilization? Aditi Priya, AG.
Yes, ma'am. When the two types of gametes sperm and ovum united, they form a single cell called the fertilization egg or zygote. This process is known as fertilization.
Okay, next, after that, Priyanshu. Priyanshu Rajab.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
How many types of reproductive patterns are found in this animals? Reproductive patterns. Name.
There are three types of reproductive patterns. First, external fertilization and external development. Second, internal fertilization and external development, and internal fertilization and internal development.
Okay. Next, Yashvi.
Yes, ma'am.
Yashvi, you tell. What is explain about external fertilization and external development, and give one example.
In external fertilization and external development, the fertilization of the egg and sperm takes externally, and the development of the zygote also takes externally. That is, parents release sperms and ovum externally. For example, in frogs, the male and female frogs shed their respective gametes in the surrounding water where fertilization occurs, and the development of zygote also takes place in the water.
Okay, correct. Now
And for
next,
example,
Deepa.
Yes, ma'am.
Deepa, you explain internal fertilization and external development.
In internal fertilization and external development, the sperms are passed from the male into the female body. The fertilization takes place within the female body. The zygote, after its formation, is surrounded by some secretions along with some reserved food. These help in development and protection of the growing embryo. For example, animals like hen, the development of the chick takes place after the egg has been laid.
Okay, Kavish.
Yes, ma'am.
Kavish, you tell me internal fertilization and internal development.
Internal fertilization and internal development. Both fertilization and development takes place in the female body. This means that the formation of the zygote and development of the young ones takes place inside the female body. For example, human beings, elephant, cow, and other animals belong to this category.
Now next, Vanshraj.
Yes, ma'am.
Vanshraj,
Yes, ma'am.
you tell me, state the how is fertilization in hen different? How is fertilization in hen different from fertilization in frog?
मैम आपका वॉइस क्लियर नहीं है.
How is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
How is fertilization in a hen different from that of frog? Question number D3 I am asking.
ma'am, may I?
Do you know the answer?
May I?
Ma'am, Kavish.
Ma'am,
Ma'am,
may
may
I
I?
Rashmi?
No,
Ma'am,
ma'am.
may I?
Kavish.
Ma'am, may I? Riya,
Are
may
you
I?
interested? Abha.
Kavish.
Abha 8D, are you interested? Abhijit,
Ma'am, may I?
Deepen.
Ma'am, will you please repeat the question?
Question is, how is fertilization in hen different from fertilization in frog?
Ma'am, may I?
Ma'am, may I?
Ma'am, may I?
Ma'am, may I?
Ma'am,
Ma'am,
may I, Ananya?
कौन बोलना चाह रहा है? Deepen, can you tell?
Ma'am, Kavish.
Deepen. Kavish, you just wait, you have got the chance, na? I'm trying some other students also to speak. Abhijit, can you speak? Okay, Kavish, tell.
Ma'am, may I?
Yes,
कौन है
ma'am.
ये?
Ma'am, in hand.
मोहित राज बोलिए मोहित.
मैम
Yes, ma'am.
बोलो.
मैम
मैम
आदित्य
मैम वंश
Wait,
राज.
wait.
Frogs
Mohit is
laid by
trying.
frogs.
मैम मैं
Wait, Mohit Raj is trying.
मैम क्वेश्चन क्या था मैम?
Question is, how is fertilization in hen different from fertilization in frog?
Large number of egg laid by frog at the same time higher than the laid by hen.
मैम
ये
may I वंश
आंसर
राज.
नहीं है बेटा इसका.
मैम वंश राज.
Correct answer.
मैम
मैम वंश राज.
Ma'am, can I?
वंश राज
Ma'am.
बोलो. वंश राज, tell.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. In a hen, internal fertilizations takes place, while a frog external fertilizations take place. However, both have external development.
Okay, ठीक है. Next question is, state the difference between OV pairs and VV pairs. Abha. Others, those who are not answering, mute your mic. Abha. You all don't respond at all, children.
Please repeat the question.
Ma'am, may I?
Adnan,
मैम अदिति मैम may I
wait.
Arushi
Arushi,
May I?
Arushi, okay, you can.
yes ma'am
State the difference between OV pairs and VV pairs.
yes ma'am viviparous animals are those animals whose females give birth to the young ones. The embryo develops inside the body of the mother gives birth to the young ones. For example, dog, human being, cat, mammals, etc. Oviparous animals are animals that lay eggs. The eggs have little or no other embryonic development within the mother. The development of the egg
Okay, now Aman. Aman Kumar.
Yes, ma'am.
Aman. You
Yes, ma'am.
explain this properly. एक बार और बोलो इसको. State the difference between oviparous and viviparous animals.
Yes, ma'am. Viviparous animals are those animals whose females give birth to the young ones. Viviparous example, human beings, animals. Oviparous animals are animals that lay eggs. The eggs have little or no other embryonic development within the mother. For example, bird.
Okay. Now Adnan Irshad. Adnan. Aditya Bharadwaj. You all just joined the class just to show. Atharv Kumar. Bhavna.
yes ma'am
Atharv, are you speaking? कौन बोल रहा? अथर्व बोल रहा है. Just respond.
Aditya Bharadwaj.
Okay, Srijan, आप बोलिए. While the number of eggs laid by frog at a time is much higher than those laid by a hen. Srijan. Aditi Priya.
yes ma'am
बोलिए. Why is the number of eggs laid by frogs at a time is much higher than those laid by a hen?
the number of eggs laid by
frogs at the time much higher than those laid by a hen because the frog shed a large number of eggs in the water body. And it is not necessary that all the eggs will be fertilized, but in hen's egg come out from the female body after the fertilization of zygote, which is fertilized.
Okay, very good. Next. Ananya?
Yes, ma'am.
It is the mother who gives birth to the child. How do children then get features of both the parents?
Yes, ma'am. During fertilization, the nuclei of the sperm and the nuclei of the fuse to form a single cell. This resultant single cell, after its formation, is called the zygote. The zygote contains the nuclear part of both sperm from the father and ova from the mother. Hence, it is for this reason that a child has some characteristics of father and some characteristics of mother.
Okay. Then next question. Navya.
Yes, ma'am.
Define the term metamorphosis and list the changes that a tadpole undergoes to develop into a frog.
A marked more or less abrupt developmental stage in the structure and habit of an organism occurring during its life cycle is termed as metamorphosis. The development of hind legs followed by front legs come in the frog. Then the lungs develop. The tadpole then begins to swim in the surface of water to breathe. The intestine shortens to adapt the animal to a carnivorous diet. In the case of frogs, the tail gets absorbed by the body during the last stages of the process of metamorphosis. Then a tailed tadpole changes into a tailless frog.
Okay, next. Shubh Narayan.
Yes, ma'am.
If it is the mother who gives birth to a child, how do children then get features of both the parents?
Yes, ma'am. Because the child gets features of both mother and the father, because when the fertilization takes place, the nucleus of the ovum and the nucleus of the sperm fuse together. The nuclei of both the gametes have the characteristics of the female as well as the male. Hence, when they fuse together to form zygote, the zygote contains the characteristics or genes of both the female and the male.
Okay. Next, Sarah.
Yes, ma'am.
Trace the sequence of events that lead to development of chick from the fertilized egg of hen.
Yes, ma'am. In hens, the fertilization is internal as it takes place inside the body of the female. After fertilization, the zygote starts dividing and moves down to the oviduct. As it moves down, a number of protective layers get formed around it. The eggshell is one of these protective layers. It is deposited around the egg in the lower part and of the egg just before the egg is laid. The eggshell is made of calcite, a crystalline form of calcium carbonate. The eggshell breaks down and the chicks come out, the process called hatching.
Okay, very good. Next, Ria.
Yes, ma'am.
Ria, you tell me, define the term metamorphosis and list the changes that a tadpole undergoes to develop into a frog.
Yes, ma'am. A marked and more or less abrupt development change in the structure and habits of an animal occurring during its life cycle is termed as metamorphosis. Metamorphosis begins in a tadpole with the development of the hind legs followed by the front legs. Then the lungs develop. The tadpole then begins to swim to the surface of the water to breathe. The intestine shortens to adapt the animal to a carnivorous diet. In case of frogs, the tail gets absorbed by the body. During the last stages of metamorphosis, a tailed tadpole thereby changes into a tailless frog.
Vashvi,
Yes, ma'am.
where does fertilization occur in human? How does the zygote form eventually develop into an infant?
Yes, ma'am. Fertilization takes place in the initial part of oviduct. The zygote immediately divides into two cells. These cells then divide again and again over the next couple of days, and the resulting cluster of cells makes its way to the warm uterus. This cluster of cells is called embryo. The embryo plants itself in the lining of uterus and continues dividing itself to make billions of new cells. It gradually develops the different body parts such as head, eyes, and hands and legs. When the embryo reaches the stage where all its body parts can be identified, it is called fetus. The fetus, when born, is called the infant.
Okay. Next, Aditya Raj. Where does
Yes, ma'am.
fertilization, the same question, where does fertilization occur in human and how does the zygote formed eventually develop into an infant?
The fertilization occurred in the initial part of oviduct or fallopian tube. After the fertilization, the zygote formed and it divides itself, and after some time, it became a cluster of cells. The cluster of cell called embryo and moves toward the uterus. After some months, when embryo develops and the body part of the child get clearly identified, in this case, it is called foetus. And when foetus is born, this that is called infant.
Anupriya, how is
Yes, ma'am.
fertilization in a hen different from fertilization in a frog?
Yes, ma'am. In hen, the fertilization is in hen there is internal fertilization and external development takes place. The fertilization of zygote is placed in the female body, and the development takes place in the external surrounding. But in frog, there is external fertilization and external development. The development of zygote and the fertilization of zygote and the development takes place in external surrounding.
Okay. Then Pragya, state the difference between oviparous and viviparous.
Yes, ma'am. Viviparous animals are those animals whose females give birth to the young ones, and the embryo develops inside the body of the mother. The mother gives birth to the young ones, for example, dogs, human beings, cats, etc. And oviparous animals are animals that lay eggs. The eggs have little or no other embryonic development within the mother. The development of the egg takes place in the relevant internal surroundings, and for example, fish, insects, reptiles, etc.
Okay. Aditi Priya. If the mother who gives birth to a child, it is the mother who gives birth to a child, how do children then get features of both the parents?
During this process of fertilization, the nuclei of the sperm and egg fuse to form a single nucleus. The resultant single cell formed after fertilization is called a zygote. The zygote contains the nuclear part of sperm from the father and of the egg from the mother. It is for this reason that a child has some characteristic of the father and some characteristic of the mother.
Okay. Next is Yashvi.
Yes, ma'am.
You tell me, how will you differentiate between a zygote and an embryo?
The the single cell formed after the process of fertilization is called zygote, and therefore, when the zygote immediately divides into two cells, and then the division process goes on over the next couple of days, and the result is that cluster of cells makes is is to way to the uterus, and this cluster of cells is called the embryo. It forms
Okay,
after the
Narayani,
Yes, ma'am.
you tell me, define the term metamorphosis and list the changes that a tadpole undergoes to develop into a frog.
Yes, ma'am. A marked and more or less abrupt development change that in the structures and habits of an animal occurring during its life cycle called metamorphosis. Uh, the development of hind leg followed by the front leg, then the lumps develop, then the tadpole begin to swim and to breathe. The intestine shortens to adapt the animal to a carnivorous diet. In case of frog, the tail gets absorbed during the last stage of metamorphosis. A tailed frog thereby changes into a tailless frog.
Okay. Naman Garg. Naman, you just tell, trace the sequence of events that lead to development of chick from a fertilized egg of a hen.
Yes,
Ma'am, may
ma'am.
I?
Uh, enhanced fertilization is internal as it takes place inside the body of female. After fertilization, the zygote starts dividing and moves down. A number of productive layers get formed around it. The eggshell is one of these productive layers. It is deposited around the egg in the lower part of the oviduct of the hen. Just before the egg is laid, eggshell is made up of calcite, a crystalline form of calcium carbonate.
Okay, why did you stop? Complete it.
Ma'am, can I?
He is not in the class.
In hen, the fertilization it takes place inside the body of the female. After the fertilization, the zygote start dividing and moves down the oviduct. As it moves down, a number of protective layer get formed around it. The egg cell is one of these protective layer get formed around it. The egg cell is one of these protective layer. It is deposited around the egg in the lower part of the oviduct of the hen just before the egg is laid. The egg cell is made up of calcite, a crystalline form of calcium carbonate. The embryo develop inside the egg for 21 days, the incubation period, after which the chick get fully developed. During the incubation period, the egg require a specific temperature, thus is provided by the hen by sitting on the egg. Sometimes this is done artificially, keeping the egg in an incubation. Finally, the egg cell breaks down and the chicks come out. This process is called hatching.
Okay, correct. Then next, for your homework, next chapter will be there. As the time is running short, that is why I'm telling you. Who is interested and who has not got the chance? कौन interested है और उसको chance नहीं मिला है? नमन, you just stopped in between only. और कोई है जिसको और बोलना है?
डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया था
Yes, ma'am.
हाँ?
मैम
डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया था. अच्छा, आप कंप्लीट. सिद्धांत, आर यू देयर? सिद्धांत.
Yes, ma'am.
हाँ, सिद्धांत आप बोलिए. How will you differentiate between a zygote and an embryo?
Zygote is a developing stage of an unborn disease, unborn organism.
डेवलपिंग स्टेज कैसे वो होता कैसे फॉर्मेशन कैसे होता मोहित
Yes.
can you complete the answer difference between zygote and this embryo
Zygote is unicellular. Is formed in oviduct. This is a fertilized egg also. And embryo is a multicellular embryo developed and moved down to uterus. This is a cluster of cells.
where a clear differentiation of different body parts takes place. ठीक है?
Okay, ma'am.
So children, anything else here in this chapter? I think we have. Okay, एक आपको alternative name है इसका ओविपेरस और वीवीपेरस का वो क्या किस चीज से आप बोल सकते हो क्या नाम है ऑल्टरनेटिव नेम जो है ओविपेरस और
VV means alive. Ma'am, VV means alive and
alive,
ova means egg.
alive and ova means
And ova means egg.
Then can you differentiate between direct development and indirect development?
Yes, ma'am.
हाँ बोलो.
Yes, ma'am. In many animals, the young one at the birth is a miniature version of the adult form. The development of such young ones into adult is known as direct development.
Indirect?